Hey friends, my name is Elizabeth. I am the student director here at Pinnacle Church. Thanks for taking time to check out our videos. If I'm honest, I did not enjoy middle school or really even high school. Many people always told me high school will be the best time of your life, and it turns out they were incorrect. It was not, and for a while I thought, if this is the best time of my life, then I don't want to try adulthood at all. But I found out for myself that so far, my 20s have actually been the best time of my life. In middle and high school, so often I felt unseen and unimportant. There was so much going on in my life at the time, but I felt like no one really saw me and that I had no voice. At school, I felt like just a number in hundreds of other students. In some form, I think we have all wondered things like, does it even matter if I'm here? Does anyone care what I think? Does anyone notice what I have to say? Sometimes you feel like you're on the inside of one of these fish bowls. You're what everybody is watching. And then sometimes you feel like everybody else is on the inside and they think you're there, but you feel like you're actually on the outside looking in. And sure, there are times when we feel like the center of the universe, or we feel like we should be the center of the universe, but then there are times when it feels like nobody notices us at all. When we don't feel seen or valued by people in our lives, it starts to make us feel like we don't matter. And whenever we feel like we're overlooked or ignored, it's easy to become discouraged or feel numb and disengaged. If nobody's listening, why bother speaking, right? If nobody's paying attention, then it really doesn't matter what we do, does it? When we feel like we don't matter, it takes the passion and excitement out of our lives. We don't feel like we are thriving in life. We're just surviving, and nobody wants to feel that way. But it's more than that. It's possible we have a lot of people in our lives telling us we matter. They're our parents. They're supposed to say that. Whether we hear this message a lot or whether we never hear this message at all, believing we matter is a lot harder than it looks. The good news is that today we're going to talk about someone who is very familiar with those same feelings we've all experienced. And what we learn from her life can be a game changer for all of us. In this series, Afterlife, we're talking about Easter, what many people would consider the biggest day ever for followers of Jesus, because it's the day we celebrate Jesus' resurrection. So when he came back from the dead, he showed the world that he conquered death and that he's bigger and better than we could possibly imagine. More specifically, we're talking about people who encountered Jesus after his resurrection and had a different life after they saw him. Their afterlife changed so much while they were still here on earth. Today, we're going to talk about a woman named Mary and her experience with Jesus before and after the resurrection. In the Gospels, it talks about a handful of different women named Mary. Very popular name back then, apparently. So let's clarify. There's Mary, who was the mother of Jesus. Then when Jesus was dying on the cross, there were two other Marys that were mentioned as well. And one of them was named Mary Magdalene. The truth is, there's a lot we don't know about Mary Magdalene. But one thing we know for sure is that she was a committed follower of Jesus. Basically, Mary was an outcast before Jesus healed her. So I think we can safely say that Mary understood what it meant to be ignored and overlooked. But here's why we are talking about her today. All 4 of the Gospels record that Mary was there when Jesus was put on the cross. And 3 of the 4 Gospels say she was there at Jesus' burial. And all 4 say that she was the first to see Jesus resurrected. But there was no other disciples around in the big moments of Easter as much as Mary was. But she doesn't get a lot of attention. In a lot of ways, she lived on the sidelines. If you don't pay attention to what you're reading, it just sounds like a bunch of women named Mary that no one can keep track of. And so because of that, you definitely don't get the sense that she was a major player in the story, but she was. The Gospel of John, which was written by another one of Jesus's disciples, records that while it was still dark, Mary got up and went to the tomb. But when she got there, the stone that had been placed in front of the tomb was gone. Mary didn't immediately think, of course, he's gone, Jesus is alive. No, she assumed someone just messed with the grave and took his body. She went straight to Peter and another disciple to tell them, and they ran to the tomb. And sure enough, Mary was right. The stone was gone, the body was gone. All that left was Jesus' grave clothes. The other disciples left to go tell the others, but Mary stayed where she was, right by the tomb. As if the sadness of losing a friend was not enough, now there was the added trauma of his body being taken or moved. And so John writes this: "Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw 2 angels in white, seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, 'Woman, why are you crying?' 'They have taken my Lord away,' she said, 'and I don't know where they have put him.' At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. He asked her, 'Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?' Thinking he was the gardener, she said, 'Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him.' Jesus said to her, 'Mary.' She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, 'Rabboni,' which means teacher. Jesus said, 'Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God.' Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, 'I have seen the Lord,' and she told them that he had said those things to her." So, on the day Jesus defeats death, proving God's love is bigger and stronger than anything else, he makes sure Mary was there to see it. So when the rest of the world saw women as unreliable, inferior, and untrustworthy, Jesus saw something different. He valued and elevated them, and even when the rest of the world didn't. Jesus made the decision to trust Mary with his resurrection. He knew Mary and called her by name. He chose her to be the first person to share the good news. While others made assumptions about Mary because of her gender, her past, or anything else that would have written her out of the story, Jesus wrote her in as a major character. Jesus made sure Mary knew that she had value and her word could be trusted. When the world was sending Mary one message, Jesus sent another. And because of the resurrection, Mary knew that she mattered. This month we celebrate something that happened 2,000 years ago, a day that changed the world. But on the first Easter morning, it changed the lives of the people who knew Jesus best, most of all. Because now everything Jesus had said meant more than it did before. Easter morning, Jesus coming back from the dead proved Jesus was who he said he was, and that his words mattered. So just like Mary mattered to Jesus, so do you. And this Easter, that's the message I want you to take with you. You are seen, known, loved, and important. Jesus says so. He defeated death. We can trust what he says. And Jesus says Mary mattered, you matter, and the person next to you matters. When we live like that's true, our lives look different, and the lives of people we know and interact with look different too. I want you to think about how you treat yourself and others. Ask yourself some questions. Do you believe that you matter? Do you treat yourself like you matter? Do you allow other people to treat you as if you don't matter? Do you treat others as if they matter? Are there people you treat like they matter more? And are there people you treat like they don't matter at all? What would it look like to start treating yourself and others like Jesus did? Like they matter? What would change in your life if you really believed that you matter to God, and because of that, the people around you matter as well? This week, I want you to think about what would change in your life if you really believed that. Because of the resurrection, Mary knew that she mattered, and her afterlife looked different. But make sure you get this. Because of the resurrection, you can know you matter too.